We look at all areas of risk that could impact a hospital or health system. So think of it like a marketplace for risk management, where we connect the providers, the hospitals and health centers with their third-party vendors and products. It's the continuity and it's the resiliency that's often more important than the protection itself.
Welcome to The Growth Switch, the podcast where we explore the strategies, struggles, and breakthroughs of bold business leaders. I'm your host, Jules Fox, growth strategist and lead content creator at Aries Media. I'm here to uncover how today's top brands are scaling, overcoming challenges, and unlocking sustainable success. Now, for those of you just tuning in, Aries Media helps grow successful brands like yours with comprehensive hands-on support for sales, business development, and performance marketing. Go ahead and drop growth into the comments if you want to learn how to do that. Today, we are fortunate enough to have Ed Gaudet on the podcast. He actually is the host of the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. So he's a veteran, super excited to have him. He's the CEO and founder of Sensinet, and he is a visionary leader transforming healthcare cybersecurity and risk management through innovative technology, collaboration, and customer-first strategies. Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jules. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining. So, all right, let's chat about your journey. You came from building software products to launching Sensinet, and it's an inspiring story. Want to hear a little bit more about it? You can start wherever you feel like the beginning is, or whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was my last company. We took public, and we ended up taking it private again through a private equity firm called Thoma Bravo on the West Coast. And so the CEO and a bunch of other leaders were, thinking about the next journey. For me, it was retirement, and I have a lot of other interests outside of what I do daily, in the arts specifically. And of course, I also love music. And so I was following these guys around for a little bit. The incarnation of Grateful Dead, the Dead and Company.
Nice.
And my wife was wondering what I was doing sitting at home, where I was always on the road. And basically, she's like, you need to go back to work. You're just causing way too much trouble. So, I thought about the next opportunity in tech, and I typically look for opportunities where there's manual processes, where software can come in and automate those in a productive way, efficient way. And I kept coming back to this notion of third-party risk. I had experienced it directly. My team had experienced directly. The company that I last worked for experienced it directly, and it was very painful from the vendor's perspective. And so I reached out to about a dozen or so providers in the healthcare field that I had relationships with to understand the pain that they were facing. And lo and behold, it was painful on both sides. So Senseinet was born at that point.
Yeah. And I think that that's brilliant. A lot of people try to invent a market fit, but when you've actually lived it and you know that it's a problem, and then you check in with the other side and do the research and you know that it's a problem, it ends up being a great fit. So tell me a little bit more about which companies ideally would be the perfect fit for Sensinet.
Yeah. So what we've done that's different is we've taken a network-based approach to the problem. So think of it like a marketplace for risk management, where we connect the providers, the hospitals and health centers with their third-party vendors and products. And we put them on this network to facilitate the management of risk. And by doing that, you get some incredible efficiencies. You also generate a lot of data, as you can imagine. So we, over time, organizations like Intermountain Healthcare, multi-hospital, very large payer system, integrated health system in the mountain states, and someone like Cedars-Sinai in the LA area, right? So large, small, medium-sized organizations, Dayton Children's in Ohio, a smaller organization. My local organization here, a hospital that my family visits, South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, Massachusetts. So any organization that is dealing with the pain of and the requirements around third-party risk management is a candidate. We only do healthcare. And we purpose build our solution for healthcare. So we're going to be unlike other vendors in this space, in so much as we're going to provide a best-in-class solution for those organizations that are not only managing third-party risk, which is where we started, but we've evolved to include enterprise risk and governance risk and compliance. Those requirements that a hospital has to support for their internal systems, for their internal processes, for their critical functions, and the plethora of third parties, whether it be a software, technology, medical device, application, SaaS or on-premise, non-technical. It could be a laundry service that services that organization, that health system, and it's large enough that if it was attacked by, if it had a cyber event, that could shut the hospital down. So we look at all areas of risk that could impact a hospital or health system in a in a catastrophic way. And for us, patient safety, cyber risk is patient risk. So
Yeah.
we focus on making sure that those organizations are managing risk in a way that really eliminates or reduces the impact of a cyber event, whether it be data theft or whether it be ransomware. Ransomware can impact a hospital in many ways. It can affect mortality rates. It can affect and disrupt care delivery. And if you're in an ambulance and you're heading to your local hospital and it gets hit with ransomware, they have to divert you.
Oh,
If you're in a city, the diversion may be, a couple miles, but if you're in a remote location, it could be hundreds of miles. I was talking to a customer last week, and she said the nearest hospital was 2.5 hours away.
wow.
So it's a big deal for these health systems,
Yeah.
and it's not just health systems. It's anyone in that chain of care. It could be an ambulatory practice. It could be a home or a hospice center. Everybody supports, or I should say, technology supports every function, every business process in a health setting today. Everybody's relying on technology, so we have to ensure that it's running. We have to ensure the continuity of it. And if we do get hit with an event, because oftentimes we do the right things, but somebody makes a bad decision, they click on that link, right?
Hmm.
And we have to be able to recover in a timely manner too. So it's the continuity and it's the resiliency that's often more important than the protection itself.
Yeah. And I feel like, healthcare is the pinnacle of cybersecurity because you not only have the billing department with all of the financial information and the supply chain with all of the medical supplies and all the numerous doctors, and then, sensitive patient data as well that needs to meet compliance. So it's kind of like there are so many elements to protect. It's really kind of like the ultimate challenge which you've taken on, which is noble as well. As you said, you have family that goes to these hospitals. My sister gave birth at Cedars-Sinai. It's very relatable. These are big hospitals, and a lot of this is mission critical stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's, unlike any other industry in healthcare, if you support healthcare, you serve alongside other providers. It's really a shared mission. And
Yeah.
because everybody knows a patient, or everybody has been a patient at one point, one time or another. And so it becomes personal. That mission is personal. It's not like you're servicing a bank or you're servicing a gas and oil company. Although those are, noble pursuits, of course, but when it's in healthcare, it's different.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about the broad spectrum of services that you do offer to healthcare agencies. What's your ecosystem like?
Yeah, so we support third party, like I said. We'll also do enterprise risk specific to the health industry. So, for example, which is unique in healthcare, is they do medical studies. So they'll work with a pharmaceutical company, an academic medical center, and the hospital will share data to those organizations to support a research study for maybe a cancer drug, et cetera.
Hmm.
That's called, functionally, it's called Institutional Review Board, IRB. And that IRB process, again, deals with data, electronic data. So we support that workflow, that use case, which is very specific to healthcare. If your EHR, if your electronic health record is on Epic, Epic is one of the big providers of electronic medical records in the industry. They have a requirement that the organization do regular security checks as well. So we support that use case. If you are adopting AI, which I think everybody is today, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. You need not only to understand where AI exists within your current organization and inventory of assets, you also, as you procure new solutions that are either all AI or have some functionality that's supported by AI, you have to ensure that those products and services are obviously risk assessed, are secure by default or by design. You don't want to bring in something that you turn on and all of a sudden your data is shared with the world. It's an evolving, ever evolving industry of new technologies that come in. I mean, 5 years ago, even though AI was in practice, I was using Bayesian models back in the late 90s. It never got to a point where it was so consumable, right?
Mm.
And so now anybody and everybody can actually consume and use AI in some form,
Right.
and understanding the impact of that in the organization, not only with technology and products that come in new, but also those that already exist that are taking updates, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to have this life cycle approach to risk. It can't just be a one and done point in time approach. It has to be, which is what it was, a decade ago, right? It
Right.
has to be from cradle to grave and all points in between. Scope may change, usage may change. You may start off in a very small part of the organization with technology, so the risk may be, controlled and relatively small. All of a sudden, it proliferates across your enterprises in every group and every division, and the investment is huge and the impact is huge. And so now you've got to take a different approach to risk. So it's really important for organizations to really to look at it from that life cycle approach versus what we've done in the past, which is that point in time approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the accessibility of it means that threat actors also have the accessibility to use those tools. So it's the type of thing where if you didn't keep up with the technology, if you didn't know what they're using, yeah, you could become extra vulnerable.
That is such a great point, and really was behind the vision for Sensinet, because ultimately we're community led and we're community built and curated. And so based on that network approach, the more providers, the more vendors and products that join the network, the more leverage you get, right? And if you think about what's happened over the last decade on the other side, the hackers, right? The bad guys, if you will, they become organized. And that organization has really enabled them to scale these attacks in a way that we didn't see, back in the 2015, 2020. Over the last, I would say, 5 years, it's gotten exponentially worse because of that organization.
Yeah.
So leveraging the community is really important in an effort to, to get ahead of these attacks, to get ahead of this risk as it proliferates across the industry.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially organized crime for people who wanted to work remotely.
Thank you. Yeah, this is exactly what it
Remote work
is.
hasn't only gone to the gig economy, it's also gone to organized
I,
crime.
I didn't want to put a target on your head, so I didn't want to say organized crime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. What kind of trends do you see emerging in healthcare cybersecurity? What kind of stuff do you think leaders are underestimating when it comes to these new threats?
Well, I mean, I think it's the obvious. It's AI. I mean, I think people are, starting off with it happens so fast and I think I just wrote a newsletter article that the adoption has outpaced the oversight of AI. We're trying to get ahead of it through these governance committees, which we need. Obviously, it's sort of like jacks to open, right? But we have to leverage tools and technologies and the process as well. Like, this is an opportunity to transform risk management in the industry, because the pace of adoption of AI is like nothing we've ever seen. It's bigger. I believe it's bigger than the internet, right? And so there's many vectors of AI to come into an organization. We talked about the new, which is what everybody thinks. Oh, I've got this new product. Well, we got to run it through the governance committee. So we got to make sure it's okay to bring in, right? Well, what about all the other thousands of products you currently have that you're currently using that are updating and they're introducing AI? I remember when, chat came out shortly thereafter, Adobe started putting in AI capabilities, and we're a security shop, so we have to run all of our products through our own assessment process as well,
Yeah.
based on the obligations we set with our customers, right? And all of a sudden, Adobe just starts throwing in AI into Acrobat, and you couldn't turn it off. It was just
Yeah.
there, and the community, I mean, Reddit lit up. They were like, everybody was incensed about what was happening. They finally, changed the settings so you could. I mean, I had to uninstall it, and so it's that. And Microsoft is no better. I've turned Microsoft Copilot off several times. It keeps coming back on, right? And so
Yeah.
these companies, right, if they're doing it to me, they're doing it to these enterprises. And
Hmm.
so, and whether it's a controlled environment or it's on a device that a doctor or nurse takes home, right? And that may or may not have access to enterprise systems, it's a real problem. And we're just getting started. So that's a big trend that people really have to start to understand and think differently about. It can't be like, it's not an incremental change, right? It's not like there were these metapixels, which is tracking software you put on a browser, basically. And these came out, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And everyone was like, oh my God, there's metapixels. And the HHS had sent out a notice that said, this is a violation of HIPAA and you have to, control these things. So people were, running around trying to understand where metapixels is, were being introduced and shut them down, et cetera. Because again, it's tracking software, right? And so it's
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
patient tracking. So, I mean, that's incremental. Like this is game changing. This is exponential change, right? And so you can't just like incrementally run around and plug the hole. You have to look at your entire process, your entire set of resources. And if you've been doing risk management the way you were doing it 10 years ago, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that. And whether you work with Sensinet or some other vendor, you really need to get a handle on this and you need to transform not just the technology. If you just apply a technology like Sensinet and you actually don't manage the holy trinity of people, process, and technology in
Yeah.
concert, right? You don't look at your process and you actually don't transform your process in support of the technology, and those two things inform one another, you're going to be in trouble in a few years, because the pace at which AI is coming, it's not going to change. It's going to get worse,
Yeah.
and you've got to get a handle on it. So that's the big thing that keeps me up at night.
Absolutely. I mean, and just, to your point, for, I think, it used to be that we were hundreds of years in between technology, when different types of metal were invented, and
Right.
okay, well, this kingdom, now has access to steel. This is a big deal, but it's going to be hundreds of years before the next invention. And it's just not like that anymore. If you look at a deep fake video from this year to last year, you would have said, there's something peculiar about that. But this year, the deep fakes that are coming out, I worked in TV and film for 10 years. And I can tell you that they're so good. I don't know that I could tell you that it's a deep fake anymore. It just is so accurate. I'm like, I think that's real.
It's crazy.
This no longer
That's
looks like CGI to me. That's real.
Yeah. Yeah. And how are you going to deal with that if all of a sudden those deep fakes start affecting the safety of our loved ones, right?
Yeah.
Right. I'm held captive, send money,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's already happening through audio, but it's going to get even worse, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, it's as they say, the Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. These are more than interesting times.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, all right. So, how do you think that you can best grow Sensinet over the next few years? What are the obstacles that you need to knock aside so that you can work with more healthcare agencies to help protect more patient data, to help have a greater impact on the world? How do you see your growth trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, selling into healthcare is hard because, healthcare is under tremendous pressure right now to not only service their community and to adopt new technologies that enable them to deliver better patient care safely and securely, right? A lot of the funding sources are changing. The regulations are such that there's a tremendous amount of pressure for these organizations to continually innovate their business models and the way that they make money and the way that they where they the source of their revenue or the source of their margin, if you will. And there's a saying in healthcare, no margin, no mission. And a lot of these health systems are negative margin, right? And
Yeah.
so they're either getting acquired or some of them are closing up. And so from a growth perspective for us, it's continually innovate on the solution side, on the product side, to enable an organization that's investing in Sensinet to continue to get new value out of the tool, right? And so, for example, we added AI capabilities, not only in the ability to understand where your risk associated with AI was through telemetry and other means, but also leverage AI in the overall platform in a way that supported the way you adopt AI as a health system. And so, unlike a lot of tools that just say, "Hey, we're new, we're AI, take us because you're going to solve world hunger," we had to take a different approach because our customers are health systems, and so we've developed AI at the foundational level of the platform and made it secure by design. We built it in securely. We worked with Amazon to basically have a proprietary container that we manage so the data doesn't leave Sensinet, and then also by default. So it's got to be secure by default, which means that as a health system, we don't just turn it on for you. You can opt in. So it's basically offered on demand. When
Yeah.
you're ready to adopt, you can adopt all the features, or you can adopt one feature, or you can adopt, one feature 3 and feature 10, right? So it doesn't really matter, but that's important from a health system perspective, right? If we just turned it all on for current customers, they may just stop using us because they now have to go through their governance committee that we talked about, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to give customers the opportunity to adopt based on their internal processes, based on their timeline. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the gold standard of marketing, honestly, is meet your customer where they are.
Yeah.
And if that's posting on the right platform, that's one thing. But for you, that's making sure that the infrastructure fits their workflow that they're already going with, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for us, it's continuing finding new channels of markets. Again, there's healthcare is a very large ecosystem, right? So not
Yeah.
only do you have the providers, we also have the vendors on the network as well. So today we subsidize the vendors, but that's an opportunity longer term to add
Yeah.
value to that side of the network, right? So that'll drive growth for the company as well. And then as we add these new workflows and we do these capabilities to the network itself. Remember, we started off third party, then we added enterprise. We added a risk register that's fully integrated, but you can buy that independent of the system as well. So modularize the platform in a way that you said meets the customer where they are and enables that optionality that they can choose to start small and they grow over time. That's all part of our product-led growth strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this is mission critical. I think that this is, you should have been implementing this months ago, even a year ago, probably more.
Yes,
And
yes.
if it's not there, people listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, they really need to know that. So what would you say to light a fire under their feet to get them to take
Yeah.
action now rather than kick themselves 6 months from now?
The biggest challenge is, and some of my customers are going to hate me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. The biggest challenge is the protection of an existing process. So
Mm.
if you acquire a tool like Sensinet and then you take an existing process and you try to apply it, you're going to have an impedance mismatch. You're not going to get the full value out of the tool because your process that exists was built for something else. It was built for either another application that might be pipeline based in nature, which
Yeah.
is a fully, it's a canvas of customization, right? You come in, there's some limited functionality and you customize around it, right? We're
Hmm.
not like that. We're purpose built workflows. We have customization and flexibility in the platform, but
Hmm.
not at the expense of efficiency, not at the expense of coverage of the network, right? The network leverage you get is exponential. You're not going to get it in any other way. So if your process doesn't meet the technology in some way or is open enough to let the technology inform the process, you're not going to get best in class results. And we know what best in class results look like because we measure everything and we have an internal team that does the work on behalf of other customers that may not have resources internally. So we time-based stamp everything. We measure the time it takes for a vendor to respond to a request, the time it takes the assessor to complete the assessment, the time it takes to do corrective actions or remediations, the time it takes to get approvals. Like we're
Yeah.
measuring everything. And we know that our assessors can do 5 to 6 times as many assessments as a customer assessor if they're not leveraging our best in class practices.
Hmm.
And that's huge, right? And
Yeah.
oftentimes though, there's this tension between this process, right? And if it's not if it's not part of a strategic vision to transform the process, right, or
Yeah.
the way they manage risk, then it's going to be tactical in nature, and
Yeah.
this tension is going to continue to exist between an existing process or a process that the organization feels is the best in class process.
Yeah.
It's not, because you wouldn't need us if it was. Like, you wouldn't need a tool like ours if it was, right?
Right.
So that's the big thing. So what ends up happening is, because of that, customers will choose that solution that will take them 9 months to deploy or more,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And they never get leverage out of out of a network because there is no network,
Right.
right? So that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest, challenge from a growth
Yeah.
perspective for us. It's just
Yeah. You know,
changing the way they think about it.
yeah. I worked with an AI firm. I was helping them do some marketing, and they had invented this absolutely amazing scheduling tool for a
Yeah.
healthcare organization, and it was a phenomenal tool. and the healthcare organization, okayed it, gave it the thumbs up. They implemented everything. They got the system up and running. A few months go by and they realized that it's never been used. And so they're wondering, why has this tool never been used? What they didn't realize is that the person in charge of scheduling, it was a power and control issue. And they actually enjoyed sending different doctors difficult schedules or easy schedules based on how well they liked the person. And they were the person who would be implementing this scheduling tool. And so if the people aren't on board, to your point, if the people aren't on board with any system, no matter how good it is, it's an ineffective tool. And so it needs both the wonderful, phenomenal tool, but it also needs the onboarding, and it needs to be easy to use. The people need to adopt.
It's that holy trinity of people, process, technology.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about it, but then no one actually follows it. It's kind of comical. I watch it. Our best-in-class customers do. I mean, they're getting incredible leverage out of our product, incredible leverage out of their process. I mean, they're crushing it right now, which is awesome. So they give us these case studies that we bring to other people and say, look, if you just follow these best-in-class practices, you can be best-in-class. Like this customer, right? So anyway, it is a challenge, but it's wonderful to see it happen, because once it happens, these assessors that are really under tremendous pressure to turn these assessments around quickly for the business, for the clinicians or the operational leadership, right? They need help. They need a tool. They need leverage to do their job. And quite frankly, some of that work is rote. Some of that work is banal. And you really want to move up license to deal with cybersecurity, like you said, threat management. Maybe you want to start predicting or get in a place where you can start to really get ahead of risk. You can start focusing on those plans for corrective actions and remediations, right? I want to put the controls in place. I don't want to be doing any assessments, right? So I think that's the other thing that a tool such as Sensinet can do for the team that actually has to do the work. It can truly make heroes of them in the eyes of the business, where right now they're under so much pressure to turn these things around because the business needs to adopt those tools, right? And if they don't, and they're a doctor with control and with influence, this is what creates shadow IT, right? They can go off and they can adopt a tool on their own because they're doctors, right? And then they can say, okay, we need to now get it on the network. It's your problem. And that causes additional friction in the organization. So, having a really good closed loop process is good for everybody.
Yeah. So Ed, how can people best connect with you?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You check out my Forbes articles. I write for the Forbes Technology Council. I've got one coming out now, which I think will be, I love to write about new ways to think about risk in the context of organizations. Like, for example, cybersecurity should be at the table with board level issues such as audit, such as compensation, such as strategy, right? And it's starting to move that way, but we've got to do a better job of making cybersecurity a first-class citizen in organizations. Because if it is, people will start to treat it the right way. They'll start to look at it less as an expense and much more as a business enabler. And I think that's the mission I'm on right now, is to try to change the perspective and change the awareness of really good, not just cyber hygiene, but cybersecurity strategy in the context of governance, risk, and compliance. Because it's it's a really big deal if we get it right.
And we're going to see all those links down below. All the viewers, all the listeners, go ahead. You can find Ed's LinkedIn. You can find the Sensinet website. We'll go ahead and put the Risk Never Sleeps podcast down below.
Thank you.
And of course, we'll link up to those Forbes articles that you can deep dive, really get educated. Ed, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the
Awesome.
podcast.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.